ओके अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सो द मिल ऑन द फ्लॉस के हाफ जो शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस हैं वो कर लिए थे। आज नेक्स्ट जो हाफ क्वेश्चंस हैं वो कर लेते हैं इसके। ओके सो लेट्स स्टार्ट। हु इज़ मिसेस जेन ग्लैग? Jane Clegg is Mrs. Tulliver's oldest sister. Tom and Maggie dislike her since their childhood. She is a conceited woman. She defends Maggie after her so-called elopement with Stephen. What does Maggie do after her father's death? Maggie starts teaching in a village. She becomes a striking woman. She goes to St. Oaks to visit her cousin Lucy. She lives with her cousin, where she develops a new contact with Lucy's suitor Stephen Guest. Who is Bob? Jackin. Bob is Tom's friend. He is kind and generous. Where Mr. Tulliver loses everything, he offers the award he earned for putting out the fire. He is a friend of the family. He is a successful peddler and leads Tom to his first speculation opportunity, which eventually allows him to repay all his family's debt. How does Philip come close to Maggie after the death of Mr. Tulliver? When Maggie goes to live with Lucy, she encounters with Philip. She renews her relationship with him. She seeks permission from Tom to meet him, which Tom gives her because he wants to buy Cote mill back from Stephen. Maggie convinces Philip to sell the mill to her brother Tom. What do you know about Mr. Dean? Mr. Dean is a successful businessman. He manages for Tom's first job. It is because of his skills Tom succeed in world of business. He made his fortune through hard work. How does Maggie go with Stephen on a boat ride? Lucy, Maggie, Philip make a plan to go to a boat ride in the river Floss, but Philip, feeling ill and jealousy, sends Stephen instead of him. When Lucy realizes that Philip is not going, she also leaves the boat and let Maggie and Stephen go alone in order to come close to each other. Who is Mr. Glegg? Mr. Glegg is a retired wool dealer. He is a non-serious fellow. He is an avid gardener. In his retirement, he marries Mrs. Glegg because of her thriftiness. He is generous enough to offer a few dollars. Why Maggie is unable to return from boating in the evening? Stephen rose Maggie and asks her to marry him. The weather becomes worse and they are far down the river. Maggie boards a larger boat with Philip. They reach Mudport and sleep overnight on the boat deck, so she is unable to return to St. Ogs that evening. Write a short note on Mrs. Sophie Pullett. Mrs. Pullett is Mrs. Tulliver's sister. She is very prone to crying. She is in habit of going frequently to the doctor. She is anxious whenever she sees anybody suffering from physical alignments. What humiliation does Maggie face after her return from boating? After passing a night with Philip, when she returns to St. Ogs, Maggie is treated in town as a fallen woman and a social outcast. Only Bob Jackins and the clergyman Dr. Kent supports her. Who is Mrs. Susan Dean? Susan Dean is Lucy's mother. Like Sophie Pullett, she is Mrs. Tulliver's sister. Mrs. Glegg dislikes her for being too showy with money. She dies soon after the death of Mr. Tulliver. How Maggie finally gets together with her brother Tom. The water of the flooded river Floss began rushing under the Jackins' door. Maggie goes toward Cote mill in a boat to rescue her brother Tom. She finds Tom drowning. Her own boat is capsized by debris in the river, and Maggie and Tom drown in each other's arms. In this way, Maggie finally gets loves of her brother. Write a few words about Mrs. Gritty Moss. Mrs. Moss is Mr. Tulliver's sister. She is patient and loving lady. She is married to a poor man. She is mostly dependent on Mr. Tulliver. She is Maggie's only aunt who treats her kindly in her youth. Who is Dave Walter Stelling? Mr. Stelling is a clergyman. He starts teaching students, including Tom, to meet his expenditures. He is well educated, self confident, and ambitious. He gives the impression of wisdom to the uneducated Mr. Tulliver. What do you know about Mr. Ken? Like Walter Stelling, Dr. Ken is a clergyman. He is cold but generous person. He gives most of his income to charity. He takes good care of Maggie as well as of other people of his town. Who is Mr. Wacom? Mr. Wacom is a lawyer. He is Philip's father. He is a clever, cruel, and selfish person. He represents Mr. Pivot in Mr. Tulliver's case against him. Mr. Tulliver hates him much and considers him responsible for his bankruptcy. What do you know about Mr. Pullet? Mr. Pullet is a farmer. He is gentleman. He is very modest and humble. He is described as a great natural faculty of ignorance. Write a few words about Mr. Moss. Mr. Moss is Mr. Tulliver's brother-in-law. He is a poor farmer. He is in habit of losing money. Mr. Tulliver opposes his sister's marriage to him. Who is Luke Moggs? Luke Mogg is the head miller at Dorcorthe Mill. He is generous and loyal to the Tulliver family. He is also very kind to Maggie and Tom. Write a few short note on Mr. Raleigh. Mr. Raleigh is an auctioneer and judge. He is highly educated and good-natured. He is Mr. Tulliver's good friend. He recommends Mr. Stelling to Tulliver's as teacher for Tom. Who is Kezia? Kezia is a Tulliver's homemaid. She is loyal, good-hearted, and but bad-tempered. She stays with Tulliver family even after they can't afford to pay her. Who is Mrs. Stelling? Mrs. Stelling is Mr. Stelling's young wife. She is a conceited lady. She expects Tom to help her take care of her daughter. Tom dislikes her even though he likes her daughter. What do you know about Mr. Poulter? Mr. Poulter is a teacher at King's Lorton. He fought against Napoleon's army. He is in habit of telling such stories that one doubt their authenticity because of his inability in doing so. Okay, so the mill on the floss के short questions complete हो गए. Allah Hafiz and stay tuned for more videos. Subscribe my channel.